Welcome to another episode of the Straight Up Chicago Investor Podcast. I'm your guest, Jim Paul, and with me, as always, is your host, Tom and Mark.
I don't know if the market's softening or investors are sleeping, but all of a sudden I have a bunch of off-market deals that hit my lap where it's like, what do I not buy right now?
I feel the same where it's like, wait a minute, am I an idiot for missing out?
Yes.
Or am I an idiot for being so excited about this?
Yeah. Did something really happen? Some sort of correction that I'm not seeing? So yeah, I have a bunch of that stuff where it's like, all right, well, where am I gonna come up with the money? I'm starting to figure out that stuff. So yeah, no, I'm happy. I'm not the only one seeing these deals, I guess.
Yeah. It's also, I've been talking to other people. I don't have anything to lease up right now, but it sounds like that's kind of like, we're airing this in October. Like, it's like you missed the season.
Especially on the Northwest side. It fell off. It fell off hard right around September 20th, I think it was. So it went from, all of a sudden we had to drop some prices, $300-$400, on $3,000 rents, but it went down fast.
Yes. If you're in that situation, do not sign up for a 12-month lease. Do not put yourself in the same situation for next year.
Yep. I know I put that as a tip. So we, as a managed company, we don't let leases end October, November, December. So anyone that's signing up right now will get a 16, 18-month type lease.
Yeah. So. Cool. All right. Let's jump into it. Housing provider tip.
All right. So our housing provider tip of the week, appliances. Appliances end up these days, being a lot more disposable. And for us as a management company, if an appliance is older than 5-7 years, instead of sending someone out there for a couple $100 repair, or at least at first when it comes in, we don't just send the repair guy out anymore, because we found years back, we found a lot of times they're like, this is pretty old, just you might as well just replace it. So now you guys pay for the service charge, and you got to send them, and now you have to go buy a new one as well too. So there's a website out there, HomeSpy.io, which you can put the serial number in, you'll get the exact age of the appliance, especially if you're inheriting a property or you bought like a 4-unit and you're not sure the age. But it's a great tool to look it up and kind of have some sort of threshold that in your plan of, like, if it's over 8 years old and it's a stove, I'm just going to go replace it with a brand new one that I'll get a warranty on. And same with like microwaves. The microwaves, like if it's over 6-7 years old, you just replace it. Similar with dishwashers. Dishwashers and microwaves seem to have a shorter lifespan in our portfolio than stoves and fridges. So check that out, homespy.io.
All right. Bring in our guest.
All right. Today's guest, I'm going to link to his bio in the show notes. But man, we got to talk about land development. We got to talk about receivership. We got to talk a lot about Will County. 3 things we don't talk about too often on the show. So without any further ado, Jim Paul, welcome.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Happy to have you out here. You brought a nice car here today. You seem like to be pretty into cars.
Well, I started late in life. I tell people I got my first Corvette at 68, and this is my 5th one. So yeah, they're great cars. So
a lot nicer than my Explorer out there.
Yeah, mine too.
So, all right, Jim, you've done so much. There's a ton to talk about here. Let's start at the very beginning. How did you get started in real estate?
I went to school for engineering. I actually worked in the engineering field and research and sales and things like that. And then somehow my dad ended up buying some property. I lived on the property. And one day I just looked out believe it or not, I looked out on the property and I says, I could be a land developer. That's as simple as what I actually did. But what I did tell myself, I won't be the biggest, I'll just be the best at what I did. So I went into land development. I started with a 21-acre subdivision.
What year?
95.
95?
Yeah. Took me 2 years. I created something. Residential, single family, met a lot of great people. One of the keys for me is because I'm leaving the engineering field, going into land development, which is totally new for me. So I networked with a lot of people. I networked with engineers. I networked with county, municipality people. And I learned development planners, land planners. I basically got involved in the planning stages because to me, land development, the best thing for me, or the most interesting thing for is the creativity and the uniqueness of the plan. I have good planners, and I challenge them in regards to it. So we created that, and then the next development was...
before we go on, though, you just casually I'm going to take a 21 acres. Like most guys would do, like, hey, I'm going to build a single-family home and, like, scale up. Like, you jumped into 21 acres, new to the industry. Like, let's talk about that a little bit. That's one that makes you go, whoa.
Yeah, I'm also curious. What parallels were there from your engineering background to land development?
I'll tell you, if anything that engineering done for me, other than I learned all about the electrical field in regards to it, it disciplined me, really. I mean, there are some majors that you take, being a doctor, being an engineer. There's probably other majors that will discipline you because you have to really invest your time into it and research and make sure you do good and come out on top in regards to that. So what I did is, because I didn't know a lot of things, I just basically started networking, asking questions, and dissecting a lot of things from the, good information, bad information. So I reached out to the Builders Association, which I eventually became a board member. I was on the board of directors for the Southwest Home Builders Association. So I was networking with these builders who had all these experiences, and I learned a lot of things, and planners as well. And then I went about it, and the first hurdle for me was we had to finance the infrastructure. So I had to put my house on the line, and I realized that I could lose it all, but if you work, what I found is just keep busy, work at what you're trying to do and trying to create and things. So that's what I did. I created that. It took me 2 years to actually get sales going, and reached out to multiple brokers, and we had fails here and there, and finally we ended up selling the bulk of the properties. And one of my family members, he's well off. Well, he says, "Well, if you ever get into another one, let me know." Well, the next one was 160 acres.
Well, here, just we haven't talked too much about land development on here. First off, I was curious what part of the Chicagoland that was located, but then also kind of like a bullet point of like you take everyone sees raw land everywhere. Like you got to bring utilities there, you got to bring water there, you got to easements, like all that stuff. Like I'd love to just kind of hear. You don't have to go too long. Just kind of a bullet point of like between that and I can sell a lot.
Right. Well, first off, I don't build houses, even though I have built houses in the past. I sell improved lots. Typically, I started out selling lots to individuals, and then I got to know the builders, and they started to see my product. Keep in mind, I'm in the rural. I created stuff or some developments in Will County. In Green Garden Township was not Frankfurt Incorporated, New Lenox Incorporated. So I had to pull the builders out of those locations that they saw a lot of success. So I had to create something totally different. And I did. I created a cluster open space development where we have, 75 acres of open space on Canterbury Lakes, which was my second development. We have trails, we have lakes, we have park, we have gazebos and things like that. So I looked at the land, and I started talking with engineers to basically interviewing attorneys, because you need a good attorney. And I went through a couple bad attorneys. Finally, I located one that was a past executor on the Will County Land Use Department, and I utilized him. And then I finally got a good engineer to start to create a plan. So I didn't know planning at that stage because this all new to me. But I also knew I want to learn. I had the drive to, I want to learn this, and I want to do it right, and I'm building within the area that I live. So it was a fight because, first off, it's rural, and they don't, typically you do large lots in the rural areas. Well, I had water and sewer right across the street from another major development that was not in the township, so I was bringing it over. So we worked through, finally got through the township and then the county, revisions on the plans, many meetings with the engineers and land use department, and finally we started building development. And it's nice to see sales, before you start putting all the money into the infrastructure, because then you're really investing a lot more than just the land. It's the infrastructure cost that, can tax you too, or tax a development. So we went that way, and then we created this, and we brought in a broker to market this. It didn't work for this broker, so we went on to another, and then I reached out. This is where I called this planner. I says, "Is there anybody out there that knows what they're doing?" Because I basically want to have a sit down with them and talk with them. So they came out, and 2 builders that came out and looked at it, and they were very successful, highly successful. And they took the time and came out and told me a couple things, and then I tweaked my presentation regarding my development. And then finally we started selling some property. In fact, I had the Builders Association. I had 80 builders out there. Nobody took on, said that we're going to buy lots, but I learned from the experience and everything. And then we finally started selling individuals. Typically, builders will go into areas that are well populated versus I'm coming out in a rural area, even though you got a creative plan and uniqueness. So we went from that. And in 2 years, we sold out.
You take a piece of land and you put roads through it and open spaces and lots. Like, how much of that is the developer get to participate, or is the engineer control a lot of that? Like, that seems like the fun part. I come from the old school Sim City. Like it seems fun.
Well, engineering is one thing. You have the ordinances, you have the county requirements or the municipality requirements on engineering. You can't change. Plus, you have different agencies like IDNR, FEMA, Army Corps. So you got to meet all those criteria.
So they're all involved in this process.
Oh, yeah. Wow. It depends on the property. If you have floodplain wetlands, the Army Corps and other agencies will be involved in it along with the municipality. In this case, it was pretty clean. There were no major issues with floodplain or wetlands. So we moved forward on that and worked with the county. This was Will County, so we worked with them, and through this, I met some very interesting people, and I hooked up with a great planner, 2 planners, one who does 38 states. He's kind of nationally known. I learned from them, their creativity. You really push the limit, because if you can take a piece of property and change it 1 or 2 percentage points, the return could be that much, maybe even twofold. So it's very important on the front end for location, finding a good location. And location may not mean that everybody's built around this property. It means, can you bring the people out here to buy? And what type of product you're going to have. So, and then the other thing is a great land plan. Like, wow, this really makes sense. My wife and I can live here. So, and a lot of times I would bounce it off just everyday people, even my wife. I'd say, well, what do you think about this plan? What do you think about this name? What do you think about this? Because I really wanted to perfect it and take it to another level, even though, we all know that there's thousands and thousands of builders out there, and some of them have good product and most of them have bad product. That was that development, and then we moved on to Canterbury, which was much bigger.
Before we go to Canterbury, just a general question. How does one source land deals? Like, where are you finding this? Is it just brokers? Is it just driving around?
As much as we use a lot of brokers, finding, in fact, when I was sitting out in the car waiting to come in, I was talking with another broker that's looking for a piece of land for me, and I basically trust his judgment in regards to it, but it's still, I have questions and comments. So you could really, if we're talking about a broker, that you need not a broker that's selling buildings, we need a broker that knows, that's dealt in land development in the past, maybe not actually done the development, but has provided land and knows what to look for. I don't need losers. Don't waste my time sending me over 100 pieces of property and hoping some of it will stick. I don't need that. I need, why did you send me this property? Tell me why. I need to take it from that point, more energy into the property by the plan, the attraction, what are we going to add to this? What are we going to sacrifice in regards to the property? So we take it from the point of the broker or the landowner. Now, the other way that I have found, because I live out in a rural area, is I just went and saw a piece of property and I would knock on the doors of the people that own the property. And I says, would you like to sell your property? Hello, I'm your neighbor down the block, which is about a mile down the block. And the truth is the next property, that's what happened. I was driving down the street and I saw this beautiful property that could be a golf course. And I said, well, I'm going to just stop in there. And I did. And a little lady came up to the door and I introduced myself. And I says, you don't know me, but I like your property and I'd be interested in buying. And she says, young man, I was a young man back then. She says, come on in and sit down. I'm actually looking at 2 contracts with 2 other people, but I'll entertain you. And we actually ended up buying the property and creating Canterbury.
When you put something under contract here, how much are you investing before you know that it's a go? Right? There's got to be a lot. This sounds like a lot of front end work.
Well, first off, when you identify a property, you and find out what the specifics are, like the price, time. Time is of the essence. In development, it has gone for short periods of time to like 9 months, maybe under 12 months to get a development approved. And it depends on the size of the development, but to 18 months to 24 months, depending on what municipality you're dealing with.
And you're just to really simplify this, are you just contingent on this getting approved?
A lot of people, if we bought all the land and everything, they'd either be broke or land rich.
Yep.
Our contracts are based on contingencies. So we do our investigation. Typically we want at least 12 to 18 months. In fact, the land deal I'm looking at right now, I told the broker, I says, are the owners fine with me asking for at least 18 months? And you can always go back to the table and say, hey, we're at 17 months. I need another. You hope they don't turn their back on you and say, no, we don't. You need to buy it because you've invested a lot of soft costs. Mm-hmm. Before you get into a property where the shovel's in the ground, the excavators are out there, and surveyors are out there and everything, you've invested a lot of soft costs. Those are anywhere from land planning to engineering, preliminary plats, preliminary engineering, permitting, or applications for if you have wetlands and floodplain, you have to put in for applications, meetings, anything else, maybe studies, phase 1, sometimes even phase 2 if you've had a gas station on a piece of property. So, and I've had that. So you want to do your due diligence up front and make sure you do it thoroughly. Otherwise, you could be stuck holding a piece of property that is not what you expected it to be.
And then do you have to go hard with any of this earnest money, like in the contract, or no?
It depends. All contracts are different. All deals could be different, but we prefer to put as little down on possible on the front end. But usually, if we took a $2 million deal, they're going to probably want 25 to 50 grand down. Not hard, because we won't do that. Nobody will do that usually, unless it's a slam dunk like downtown Chicago. Mm-hmm. We'll put that money down and then we'll move forward on investing money into, we need a planner, we need an engineer, we need all preliminary information, we need to meet with the counties. Oh, they want us to do a study on traffic study. Yeah. Believe it or not, that's another $4,000 or $5,000 right there. And they do ask for those things. And then you pay on top of that when you're submitting all your engineering to the municipalities in the county. Typically the municipalities, like the towns and the cities, you pay for that engineering that's being reviewed by them. Mm-hmm. But they're third party. Usually they use third party.
How did you get the sweet old lady to take your deal over the other 2?
The reality is I was just, I just sat there and talked with her. And I realized it comes down to money. She seemed to like me. She knew I was a neighbor down the street. I've invested in, my kids were raised out there. And she had 2 other contracts, and she basically says, if you can meet this price, we can do a deal. And the reality is we sometimes deal with people for land purchases on the phone, but the best is face-to-face. Get to know the people that you're dealing with, because they have families too, and they have people, and they have kids, they have issues, and things like that. And not that we were talking about issues, but she seemed to respect my my approach in regards to it. And I will say this: once we started building Canterbury, and we started getting roads and streets and everything in there, I invited them to. I think we were on something or doing something, but we met downtown, went out to breakfast. She lived there a good portion of her life along with her family, and she wanted to make sure that the land was done right. So, and that's the other thing. She chose me because she knew my message. She liked that I was going to do good for the community.
She trusted you. People do business with people they like and trust.
I will say this too, and because I know many builders, many developers, and we're not all created equally, but I live within my community. I live within Canterbury. I've been there 25 years, since the start of Canterbury. So, and my neighbors love me. We love the development. We've won awards. So we put back into the communities in regards to it. And, even when we come into communities like Green Garden or Frankfurt, we reach out to the educational departments, the schools, and say, hey, we'd like to have a field trip. Would you like to come out? Because we do, some of our developments are like hybrid with conservation. And I've teamed up with different agencies, and I know a lot about conservation because of my planners and different people. So we've had field trips of 150 kids. I got pictures of buses of kids coming out there and lunch on the grounds. And so we've given back to the community, and that's another key. We're not coming in here just trying to make some money and then leave. And keep your reputation clean. That's very important because it will follow you.
Yeah, you're living in the subdivision, right? Like there's nowhere to hide.
And the other thing too is you're building a portfolio, you're building a resume. So when you go into different areas like Indiana, for instance, or maybe even Florida, I use those initial developments that we built and everything up to that point where we're looking at properties in these different areas. And I said, if you like, you can get a hold of the county or the municipality, and they will speak on our behalf in regards to it. And I give them some things. Cranes did an article on us because of our creativity, and amongst all the developers and everything, they chose us. And then we won the EPA award. And we won other awards, Conservation Foundation and things like that. So,
what was some of that creativity? Like, what makes Canterbury unique?
What makes Canterbury unique? We have now we're going to get into the design of a development. The typical roads today are usually about 31 edge of pavement. They're wide. It's almost like a landing strip you can drive fast through. So what we have found, and even in my studies, narrower roads and winding roads slow down traffic. So with Canterbury, we went 24 edge of pavement. And then we don't even have sidewalks. We took all our investment in people walking, and we put it on the backs of lots. And we created a walking path system of 4 miles to connect with the next development that would come on someday. And then within that open space area, we created some very creative areas where people could sit and meditate and enjoy, reflect on that. The other thing is our lots don't back up to other lots, so when I walk out my backyard, I see open space. I don't see my neighbor's yard, and I don't see the kids, running every which way, which I don't mind. I have kids too. But it's kind of a peace, and it's a social environment. That's what you want to create. Something that says, I'm going home. I'm going to unwind and I'm going to relax and I'm going to enjoy the views. And that's what we've created. I've created other developments in incorporated areas like Frankfurt, for instance. I haven't moved there because I cannot create what I created out in the Will County or the unincorporated areas. Municipalities do have certain requirements. Typically what is called a cookie cutter or traditional developments where lots back up to lots is their resume. Will County was interested in hearing what I had to offer in regards to, because they'd never had it before. And they sat down, we created something very nice, and we even had land use and all them out there for an educational tour of the property. And we created something that was quite unique, and I could pull people from the neighboring municipalities like Frankfurt, New Lenox, Mokina, because I had something different, something unique, something like, wow, there's a lot of good social benefit here. So that's what we did with Canterbury.
When you go to design something like this, like it all sounds great, right? I'm assuming when you do something nice like that, though, costs go up, right? So like, how do you weigh, like, because we run into this all the time when we're trying to flip houses, like you want to put out a great product and you also don't want to go broke, right? And you gotta toe that line to the best that you can. So talk to us about maybe some of those decisions you made where, we invested an extra $1 million here or whatever it was, and it worked.
What people think, that's not true. That when you invest, usually, if you do it right, when you invest in the money in building something a little bit more creative, like one side of the street where you only have lots on one side, or you have open space and you have, hey, I could have got another 50 lots. But what happens is the actual price on a lot goes up. They have found
it justifies the
cost. They have found that open space developments have basically appreciated another 10 to 20% versus a traditional straight zoning subdivision. So and I can sell faster. So now you get into certain areas of the country, certain areas of the city and suburbs where Naperville, it's a hot market. Build anything and they'll come. You start to get in those areas, the fringe areas maybe, or areas where there's not as energy of development, then you create something and you bring them in because the message is we got something more than just buying a home, having a lot.
How is this all financed? Like, is this all, you don't have to get too specific here, but are there, banks that specialize in land development, or is this more of just, private capital and go to work?
No, the only private capital I've used is family at time. And, typically I tell people, I says, if you're going into your business going by yourself, that's the best thing. And nothing, I've had great relationship with my family. I still have great relationships beyond that, but it gets financed by banks. Typically, I don't go out for private capital, even though I could. And there may come a point, I'm looking at a project down in Florida that's going to be a little bit more like $50 million. And I won't build the buildings, but the infrastructure, my end will probably be about $15 million. So, but in regards to if somebody wants to go out and find a piece of property and identify it and say, hey, I want to buy this, and negotiate the price and start putting all the cost together in regards to, they're going to be dealing with the bank, and not all banks will do land deals. We went through that scare in 2007. Before that, it was a great market. It was a crazy market. People would call me and say, where should I buy land? I said, take a dart and throw it at the map and buy land. And that's the way it was. But I also said in the same breath, I said, listen, this is not going to continue. I sold 4 big parcels of property in the rural area in 1 year, in millions. I mean, we were turning property, but 07 came along and we had to recreate ourselves. Everybody did. You know, a lot of builders and a lot of developers went out of business. We continued on. We just didn't build. That's why I went into other companies. My son was working for me. And he says, you know, I don't want to sit around waiting for development because it could be a long time. So I went out and started up a couple companies that are in business today. My passion is development and creating companies, not managing companies, but creating companies. But land development is a great avenue. And just like I went into it, anybody can go into it as long as they have the drive, the discipline, the knowledge to say, this is good, this is bad. And I always tell people, due diligence, due diligence, due diligence. We talk about location, but when you get a piece of property and when you start talking hundreds of thousands and some millions typically, then you want to make sure this thing's going to fly.
Yeah. How do I get screwed here? Right. Like answer that. What are all the ways that this can go wrong? And
that's what, unfortunately in 2007, the market crashed, tanked. And, we were, as all the other builders and developers, we were dealing with the banks, and they had their requirements. The OCC and other regulatory bodies had to basically deal with those things, and they had to follow the guidelines. But, it was a bloodbath back then. For a long time, everybody thought we were going to kill. I even thought 3 years, this will be over. And I probably put out $1 million of interest over the 3 years. And, it didn't continue. So you had to sit and negotiate and work it out. And we did. And that's why we went back in development. So there was a good time for development. And then there's times where there's not a good time.
Such a good job networking, getting off the ground, right? Like that said, like, what would you tell yourself now going back to 1995? What is like, all right, I would have done this differently. Playing Monday morning quarterback. What are some things you would have changed?
Some of the properties I wouldn't have bought. I mean, we went into, one of the family members was involved with me, and I said, we got an industrial piece of property over in Mokina. I said, why don't we buy it? It's on a good 191st. It's a good area, da-da-da. We ended up getting the property, and, all of a sudden we, do all the preliminary engineering. We're not going to build the infrastructure. Sometimes you do the entitlements, or you just get the property and they buy it for you. The 06, 05.
Yeah, just done.
I got this property and I haven't done anything. You want it? Okay, good. And they're paying 3, 4-fold on it. I mean, the money was crazy. So we got into the industrial, I think it was like 18, 20 acres, good location. It was just, timing, and there was other properties there. We ended up getting out of the property, made $50,000, but we didn't lose money, which is good. And we also learned. And the comment to the one family member and myself is, hey, we're not industrial people. We could, but that's not our focus. My focus is residential, mainly mixed use. I could do commercial, with some residential, and I have. So again, due diligence, due diligence, due diligence. So important.
I want to pivot here. You mentioned some of the other companies. When we first started talking off air, we were talking about receivership. So I'd like to go down that route a little bit because we have not really covered that all. We're 400 episodes in. I don't think we've recovered receivership in too much detail.
Yeah, we went high level with Eric Weber. Like that was like episode 30. So
maybe just explain, or for our listeners who they hear that term, they don't know what it is. Let's start there. What is receivership?
Well, it's a fiduciary responsibility. You're basically an officer of the court. You are recommended by typically the note holder or the attorney that represents the note holder. Usually it's a lender, and the property has shown signs of defaulting. Notices go out from the bank after 90 days to the borrower that says, hey, where are you? Don't bury your head in the sand. You still have a responsibility. And if they don't respond, then the note holder moves forward with their attorney to basically have a receiver appointed, somebody that basically takes control of the real estate. We're going to talk about real estate, but I'm involved in trust cases, family cases too. But real estate, and I take control, or we take control of the properties. A receiver is not a company typically, it's an individual. So even though my daughter's a receiver within our company, either she gets appointed herself, her name, or I get appointed as a receiver. It's not a company. Well, I'm appointing ALPS Group or ALPS Property Management as the receiver. Now, there could be a function like, there is management of the facilities, the buildings, getting contractors and things like that. But we are an officer of court, and it's a serious position. And we look at property management. We look at receivership as it's very serious, but we extend that to our property management. Everything we do in the receivership, that position of being fiduciary, is what we carry over to property management. The reason being is, in this world we live in, not 30 years ago, but today, people get sued for whatever reasons. Even if you weren't the accusing party, they just, they throw you in the mix because you're one of the 10 people that were involved in regards to it. So you have to cover your bases. It's a very high level responsibility. I've been involved in probably over 500 cases, and cases that are land development cases, bankruptcies. I'm not a bankruptcy trustee, but I'm a receiver, state, federal. We have, our receivers are paralegal or better. So I'm a paralegal as well. Does it mean anything? Anybody can be a receiver if they want to. We feel that we want to understand the legal side, even though we can't practice law. So when we're dealing with attorneys, because they're going to be writing the orders or the motion for appointment of a receiver on the front end, they'll draft it and we'll review it and we'll say, hey, you know what, I think we need to add this or incorporate this. We want to understand their position a little bit better. Then they'll move forward on the appointment of receiver, and we typically show up on court on the first, even when we're not appointed yet, just in case the judge or the parties may have a question regarding the receiver.
How'd you get into this though? Like you weren't just in court on accident one day, like, I'll take that guy. Like, this is pretty niche.
All my other businesses it's curiosity. Like, I can do that. And through my life, I've started up 7 companies, 6 were successful. The other one was I just didn't have a good manager. I enjoy creating companies. I can do that as long as I have somebody that you take control of it, you run it. So with the 3 land development, I really oversee myself, but our furniture stores, my son runs that business down in Florida, and then my daughter runs the property management and oversees the receivership up here. But, obviously they refer to Dad and if they have questions on that. How did I get into receivership? It's an interesting observation. And so a friend of mine worked for a bank. They're no longer in business, but a pretty good sized bank, and said, Jim, you need to get a hold of this attorney, head counsel. And he even put in a good word for me. I got into property management because I saw in 2008, 2007, I saw, what's this property out there sitting vacant? Nobody's tended to it. And I said, I could do that. I can tend to that. I'm a land developer. I build buildings. I know all about this better than anybody. So that's how I got into property management. I started reaching out to the people that had the notes on it. But then the receivership, I went and met this head attorney up, and he was late for the meeting, apologized, We're sitting there, and he's basically interviewing me because he has some properties that he wants us to manage. Distressed assets are not stable assets typically. You know that. So you're getting something that the roof could be collapsing. There's mold issues, and we know mold because we owned a mold company. So we're talking about this, and he says, after you interviewed me about managing these properties, he's good. We're going to have a call tomorrow with my asset managers downtown. We'll call you. And I says, well, how about better I just come downtown and meet with your asset managers? So he said, fine. And then he says, oh, by the way, do you do receivership? And I
do now.
No, I basically said, what's that? So he said, no, you don't. So I went home and I Googled it, and I says, I can learn this stuff. I dissected it, and I created and, learned a lot of things, talked with a lot of people. And the truth of the matter is my first receivership was a land development project.
Oh, perfect.
And I walked into the court, and, the attorney told me, hey, the judge wants to talk with you, meet you in person. She wants to ask questions. I'm thinking, well, I can't tell her that I've done 50 properties in receivership. I'll just be transparent. Obviously, that's the best way. I tell anybody that's looking to learn is be transparent, be honest. And I went into court before the bench. The attorney was there, and the judge looked at me, smiled, and said, welcome, da-da-da. And I thought she was going to ask me 15 questions, but she turned her head to the attorney and says, well, you didn't draft the order right. Get it right. We're going to appoint this receiver. And they move forward on the appointment. But I take it very serious, as I take property management or land development. And that is the key. Keep yourself clean, do the right things, and be forward thinking, always thinking. Property management's a great think tank. We all know that because it's not like, oh, I'm here 8 to 5 Monday through Friday, and no, you're on alert. You're almost the SWAT team. Well, receiverships too, because you're dealing with borrowers, you're dealing with attorneys, you're the receiver. It's a very, very serious position. I don't want to scare anybody off in regards to, well, I want to be a receiver, but you scared me. No, just dissect it, learn it, develop a reputation that you can look back and say it was good, and people respected you for that. I've never had a problem with a judge, and I've been before hundreds and hundreds of judges. In fact, I've had judges even basically give us high marks publicly. And I'm now that I've gone through all of those things, and surely we may have more questions about this, but my purpose in life is to educate, to pass on the information. Now, I will say this when we talk about, well, I want to be a developer or I want to be a receiver. You can go to school for those things somewhat, but why not basically reach out to the experiences, the people that have 30 years, 40 years of experience, and dissect them, talk with them. And a college degree is good if you can apply it. But I know people that are billionaires because they have a high school degree. But I would say if somebody wants to be a developer, somebody wants to be a receiver, his network is big, and reach out to people. And, the internet's got a lot of information regarding it, and you got to have a drive. I mean, you have to have creativity. You got to think. This is not a passive job, as property management is not passive either.
No, this passive income, I'm still searching for it.
Yeah.
Well, the check's in the mail.
Going back to receivership real quick, just a couple nuance points. So, you have a borrower who's not paying. So now you have, Chase or whoever saying like, hey, we need someone to take care of the property. They appoint you as a receiver. Let's say there's a place with tenants. Like, what is your relation with the actual borrower? right? Like is he or she just out of the picture and there's no communication and
You got any stories where they've tried changing the locks or doing something like that crazy too?
right? And like I could see that happen.
yeah.
There was a note I was looking. I did not buy it, but I was looking to purchase a note, and the receiver was actually the borrower was living in the building in one of the units, and the receiver was evicting him. So like he was going through an eviction in his own building.
Yeah, sometimes you can't evict the borrower because he's, say he's in his house.
Yeah.
There are some statute regarding states that will protect him or her regarding that. But your question was on
Just the whole dynamic. Like, and do you have any crazy stories about like with the borrower? Because like,
Their back's against the wall at that point.
and they're probably going through some shit. Like they're probably not. They're not.
Yeah, that's
happy,
probably not
they're
the
not a
only
happy
problem.
person.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, let me start with this. When I'm in court, when we were in court before COVID, I'd walk in the courtroom. There's 30 or 40 people in each, in the Chancery or Daily Center. Yeah. I was on I think it was the 28th floor. We were down there 2 or 3 times a week. We had a parking spot across the street, and then just walk right in there, and you'd walk into the court and wait till your case is heard. You weren't on the case yet, so I couldn't go there and say, in my opinion. Now, if the judge asked me, have you looked at this property? Well, I'm going to answer the judge back, but typically I'm not there other than the judge is seeing that the receiver's here. They may ask about your past experiences, how long you've been doing this. One of the common things I was before, actually I ended up before one of the judges in the Chancery, Judge Reyes, and he went to the appellate court now, great judge. But I remember him because people would say, he's, you better make sure that you got your A game, which I always do. But people would go that were looking to get appointed to be a receiver would walk up with the attorney that was there on behalf of the note holder. And the Judge Reyes would ask the question, who do you work for? To the tentative receiver. And the receiver, well, I work for the bank. And nope, go ahead, sit down. That's not true. You are an officer of the court. You're a neutral party. The bank's attorney are just recommending you. You do not work for the bank. You do not work for the note holder. So you have to be level playing field, your level approach to this in regards to it. So I went before Judge Reyes, and the attorney said before I was going in, he says, you probably won't get appointed today. And I said, okay. So we went up there, and Judge Reyes did ask me, he says, who do you work for? I said, I'm an officer of the court, and I report to the judge. I do not work for the plaintiff. I do not work for the defendant. So he says, good. We're going to appoint you today. So the attorney was a little bit surprised. So I've had a lot of interesting stories. Properties that we get, usually when I go to court and if I see the borrowers there, everybody, we're people. Whether you're good or bad, I still go up to you and say, listen, the best thing you could do is don't quit your conversation with the bank in most cases, in the note holder. There's capital companies out there that buy notes, so they'll hire receivers, but typically it's a lender. And I say the best thing you can do is keep in front of the bank, try to work it out. And then I leave them with that, be respectful. There are good borrowers, but there are some bad borrowers, and I've dealt with those. But, at the end of the day, I don't care. I have to do my duty, my responsibility. And, I will bring you into court. There's a motion to compel if you do not cooperate with the receiver. And I will tell the attorney to draft a motion to bring this, to pull the borrower into court. And then contempt of court is where I can have the judge throw you in jail. So there's some seriousness. Eventually you have to cut to the chase and just work with the receiver. And a good receiver will not, I've had borrowers tell me, "Oh, you're working for the bank." I said, "No, I'm not. I'm working for the court on behalf of the court for this receivership." And I've taken deals with borrowers that I've instructed or pointed them. I said, "Listen, talk with the plaintiff's attorney, see if you can get it worked out. I think you guys can." And sure enough, they do.
So Jim, you've done a ton. What's the next 5 years for you? Like, what's on the agenda here? What's in the hopper?
Well, I enjoy building developments. The two things in life, I like building developments. I like the receivership. I mean, I like the idea that I have control of the property and I'm going to do the right thing. Property management is a good feel, but you still report back to the owners, and sometimes owners don't make the best decision in regards to the property and put you in a predicament with the municipality, the building inspectors. You got code violations, and all of a sudden the tenants are looking at the property management company and saying, "Well, why'd you create this?" Well, our hands are tied. I don't like my hands being tied. I feel like when if I do development and I do receivership, I'm going to do the right things. And I'm going to get I'm going to basically get approved by the people that have put me in that position. Sometimes the people that recommend may not agree with what I'm basically instructing the court we should do, but at the end of the day, did I do my job? And I feel in both cases, the receivership and the land development, I left a good resume. And, we go to these conferences for receivership, and, I hear the comments in a positive way that, we know you guys are good. You do a good job. So, and usually it's not how much you charge, it's do you do a good job? The reality is when you get in a receivership, it's not how long it goes, it's what's the game plan here? We don't take a property back and wait 2 years and bill. If we can shorten the receivership and end in a positive way somewhat, the borrower may not agree, they're losing their property maybe, but if we can conclude that in a positive way, it just reflects on the character of our company. And that's why people use us, is because we're not in this to, run up the clock and 2 years from now. We're in this to, what's the game plan here? And that's what when I talk throughout the country and I'm on these panels or individually, I say, what is the end game here? You're putting all this money out. I mean, you need to have an end game before you get into the receivership.
All right. What's your competitive advantage? How have you been able to do this while so many other people wish they could be where you're at?
I think of the personality of the person. Some people are cut to do this. They get scared on problems and issues and things like that. And maybe that's not your result in life. But I will say this, that my drive, I have a good drive, a good discipline. And when I went into development, my wife, my kids can tell you he was going to be a developer. And same thing is true with the receivership. I feel like I've done this successfully on the other companies. I can go out and create a business from start, or, if they can do it, we can do it and we'll do it better. So you have to have a drive. If you guys are entrepreneurs, you have to have a drive, and then you have to have some logic, some understanding. You can dissect, information and data. And today we have a lot of data available on the internet. So, and I think people I tell people, overcoming this, I'm going to lose everything. Just get busy. When you're busy, that's what on my first development, I used to wake up in the middle of the night wow, I got a $400,000 loan on my house. I'm going to lose it. But I found out I would get busy and I'd start putting a plan in place and working that way.
Yep. Well, it kind of ties into our next question. What's the one piece of advice you would tell someone that is yet to buy their first investment?
Real estate, again, it goes back to investigate or due diligence, and don't bite off more than you can chew, I guess. Oh gosh, now I've bought some pretty good sized properties, but I put the mechanism in place to buy that property. Not that, oh, well, I got $5 million laying around, but I would put it in place in regards to it. Anything that you do, whether it's big or small, you just need to make sure that you got all the questions answered. Where am I getting funding? Where is this property going? Is this a good location? Am I going to have a hard time with the municipalities? You're going to be fighting. I don't get turned off by somebody saying, Jim, when you get it to the municipality or county, they're really going to tear you up because they don't want this stuff. I want to have a conversation with them first, and then I'll evaluate whether or not we stay in the game on that one.
Yep.
Cool. What do you do for fun?
What I do, I read, I run, and I relax.
Simple.
And I like learning. I enjoy learning. I enjoy meeting people.
All right. So you mentioned reading. What's a good book, podcast, or self-development activity you'd recommend our listeners?
Focus on organization visionary. I enjoy visionary, basically learn about visionary approaches. And I actually, 3 people, my wife and my family member who was very successful. And somebody else had said, Jim, you're a visionary person. And I said, well, that certifies me. But I do like reading about topics. I think of the Wright brothers. I read 3 books on the Wright brothers, and that's past history. But the creativity of the visionary of those people back then, they may have been one of the most creative developments of our time was flying. Yep. So Lee Iacocca, in the book about when he took, he was the Mustang guy in the minivan, but he took Chrysler, and that was a great book to read. But I will say this, if you're a faith-based, the Bible's an excellent book, and a lot of books get their understandings from the Bible, because you'll find it in there, and well, I just read it in this book, and it's not word for word. It's just the approach, what they did. So, but I do enjoy books. I probably got 100 books. I buy books and I put them away, and I'll pull one out and I read it. And I read on different topics.
Other than yourself, name a valuable resource to other Chicago real estate investors.
I mentioned it. I think networking's big.
Anyone specific wise? Lender, appraiser, something?
The ones that are good. So, and I do know some good appraisers. I do know some good brokers. I would just say that whatever field you're in, I got on board with the Builders Association when I didn't know anything about it. And that was on my first development. And I met these 2 builders who came out to my house, and he says, you ought to come to the Builders Association. So I did. We have over 1,000 members.
All right. So we'll put that down there as your.
Yeah, we'll link to them in the show notes.
Yep.
For brokers, that's a good opportunity to go in there meet builders and developers, because they got to sell their product. And if you can take care of them, don't give them the fluff. If you can take care of them and sell some of their products, and maybe they have in-house sales, but they're still going to have plans or benefits where they work with brokers and pay out some handsome fees.
Jim, thank you so much. You provide a ton of value to our listeners. How can they learn more about you? Is there any way they can provide value to you?
They can call me. They can eat, and I'm more than happy to sit down with people that want to learn. They can email me. They can. I have a LinkedIn account. I'm trying to think what else. They can call our office. They can call my cell.
Today's sponsor, Essex Capital Market. Thank you for being our sponsor. So as far as lending goes, Essex is a great commercial lender for, it's comparable. If you're checking out banks, check out Essex Capital Markets.
Just a random question for you today. So you get 4 choices here. Which major fest originated in Chicago in 1980, bringing thousands of people together in Grant Park? And your options are Lollapalooza, Chicago Jazz Festival, Chicago Blues Festival, or the Taste of Chicago. So which one of these started in 1980 in Grant Park?
I'm going with Taste of Chicago. You got to pick a different one so we have a better chance.
I'm going with A.
With Lollapalooza? The Blues Festival, guys.
Oh, man.
Taste wasn't around in the 80s, right?
On November 8th, we're teaming up with CIC here at GC Realty in the Underground. We're going to do a all-day property management course. So you want to come out, you'll get a certificate at the end. I'll put the link in the show notes. Love to have you out there. It's great. And you learn so much. Even me as a property manager for 23 years, they still always have something new that's going on in the streets or some of the guests they come in. So you come in and you get the certificate. That's the best thing about it. So Jim, thank you. Tom, thank you. Listeners, we'll see you next week.
Thanks all.